Welcome back. Now, we're starting this video over at AK's house. There's a reason for that. Now, I know that a number of my viewers here are Christians, so for all of you that are Christians, I'd really like you to lift up AK's wife, BK. I didn't ask permission to use her name, so we'll just call her BK, in prayer, because I know that AK and BK are dealing with a bit of a medical issue at the moment. So yeah, if you could all please lift BK up in prayer, and God will know who you're referring to, even if you don't know her name, because we'd really like to see her back over here so she can play on that tyre swing again and ride her Harley again. Now, we'll just jump on the farm bike here, and what I'm wanting to do here is take you up to the vineyard, because I had a rather good idea here, and it was actually all thanks to AK that I came up with this idea. So I'll take you up to the vineyard and I'll show you. Now, one of the mods that I use on this farm is called the REA Wheels mod. Most people don't like the REA Wheels mod, and the main reason people don't like it is that there are a number of other mods that it does interfere with. I believe it interferes with 4D modding's incredible lawnmower, so I can't use that particular mower because it doesn't like the REA Wheels mod. And there's a few other mods it doesn't play well with either, including any two-wheeled vehicles. That's two wheels in line like this. So any motorcycle or bicycle you might want to ride, you've got to turn off the REA Wheels mod every time you want to ride them, and then just turn it back on again afterwards. But the reason I like it is that's the mod that allows vehicles to get stuck and dig into the dirt and things like that. It also forces you to think more about the power requirements needed for something, and that is where the problem came, because AK actually solved the problem without realising it. He commented in my last video, this little old Massey here was really struggling to get up this hill with even no equipment on the back. It just couldn't get up this hill, and he was absolutely right, it couldn't. And when he made a comment about that on my last video, I responded and said, well yeah, it's actually the REA Wheels mod that's causing that, and if it wasn't for that mod, I'm sure I could get this tractor up the hill. And then it occurred to me, you know, if I'm willing to, because at the time I was thinking that I was going to have to use a more powerful tractor, and the only problem is I've already decided that for my vineyard I wanted a tractor with no cabin, but because my vineyard's on a hillside, and I personally think vineyards always look better on hillsides rather than on the flat, it had to have rollover protection on it still. So there were a couple of tractors I found which had no cabin and did have rollover protection. There's a little New Holland T4 that's available on the Mod Hub. There's also, not on the Mod Hub, but you can Google it if you want it, a Same or Sammy Argon 375, and there's also a Duke's Far on the Mod Hub as well. But the problem with all three of those mods, well, they're too new, they're too modern for a farm that's set in the 80s. So if you're not restricted to something in the 80s like I am, then there are definitely tractors out there that'll suit the requirements. But if you're wanting something in the 80s, there just isn't anything that's powerful enough to to work a vineyard with. Definitely not a vineyard on the hill, but yet small enough to get between these vines. Because when you look at it here, it looks like there's heaps of room between these vines for my tractor, and that is true. The problem is that you need that space, because even half a moment's of not concentrating and you just lose it all, and end up stuck in the vine with your tractor. So you need a tractor that's considerably smaller than the gap between the vines there, and I really had my heart set on this Massey. And so that's when it occurred to me, you know, I could turn off the REA Wheels mod and the Massey would probably do the trick, and look what that does. And something else I discovered, not only does it do the trick, you'll notice that it's going quite slowly, a lot slower than this mulcher needs to go, So the other thing I discovered, if I back up like this, then start going, then turn the mulcher on, see now it's going with some decent speed. Now I still can't mulch uphill with this tractor, so when we get to the end of these rows I need to turn the mulcher off and drive back up the hill to the top of the hill again to do the next row, but that's something that I'm actually okay with. And across here. Now I've also made a change to this mulcher, and also because this mulcher I think is 1.2 metres, and there's also a tiny little cultivator. It's about 1.2 metres as well, and they're both designed to use especially in vineyards like this. And you'll probably notice as the grass is going down there and things, I've modified both this mulcher and the tiny little cultivator, and the reason I've done that is I'm one of those people that absolutely hate to leave patches behind. Like if I'm harvesting a field, I have to get every grain of crop or whatever, and if I use this little mulcher here, it always leaves little bits of grass around the poles, and it's almost impossible to get them all. So what I've done is I've actually modified the working width of this to be 3 metres, so that's why it's getting all around the poles as I go head down. So I mean, normally I don't like to do things like that because I like to keep things realistic, but it screws with my mind if there's little tufts of grass and mist here and there all over the place. So I really just didn't want that, and I thought, well, changing it to 3 metres isn't going ridiculously overboard. It's not like I'm changing it to a 10 or 20 metre working width or anything silly like that. It's, you know, still only 3 metres, which is a very, very narrow working width still. It's just enough that it means I can actually get down these vines and things. Now, when I had the problem, before AK solved it for me by asking this question on my video, when I had the problem of not being able to find any tractor that was old enough but still small enough to go down these vines, I thought, well, I might just rip all the vines out again, but I decided that even if I did that, I wanted to get them through to the first harvest first, so we can, because we know that it cost me $500,000 to put them all in. That's all the vines and that shed over there, that building there, but that building over there plus all these vines cost $500,000 to put in. And so I want to actually see how much the grapes are worth when they come off here, just to kind of gauge. I want to try and work out how many harvests what you have to do to actually pay for a vineyard. I thought it would be interesting to know, because you know, I've always actually been quite curious exactly how many harvests you have to do in a field to pay for the cost of the field. Now, even so, ignoring things like the cost of diesel and the cost of fertiliser and things like that, I'm just looking at the main, you know, this is how much a particular size field costs, and this is how much you get when you harvest that field with, you know, just a normal crop type thing. But because there's so many variables there generally, that it really does depend on what crop you're growing and things like that, I thought, well, there's not so many variables with a vineyard because you're doing grapes. So yeah, I'm going to take this vineyard here through to, at the very least, the first harvest, and then I may pull the whole thing out after the first harvest. I may keep it now that I've worked out how I can use this tractor on it. So I may end up keeping the vineyard. I'm really not certain yet, but we're definitely going to keep it until it gets up to time to do the first harvest at the very least, and so I can see how much money I get from that first harvest. And of course I've still got a very, very large overdraft from putting the vineyard in here. Now you may recall I paid for half of that 500,000 with a bank overdraft, so I've got a bank overdraft of 250,000, but slightly under that right now because I paid a wee bit of it down with some money from milk sales, but it's still, I think, 225 at the moment, I think it is, from memory. And the other 250,000 was from my my silent partner, Fury Machine Gaming, who's bought in on the vineyard. So if I do decide to up stakes and pull the vineyard out and things, I will have to pay him back first any money although you see I'm pretty certain that the vineyards here, you don't get any money for them if you take them out. So we may not even be able to afford to pull it out after the first harvest. We may have to keep going regardless, because I'd have to pay Fair Machine Gaming back $250,000 if the vineyard doesn't go ahead. But yes, we'll see what's happening here. And as I said, I think it's a lot more likely I will keep it now that I've worked out how to get this Massey to actually work in the vineyard. Because yeah, I just didn't want to use any of those other tractors I named because I knew they were all too modern for my farm. But yeah, if you were looking at putting a vineyard into a farm yourself, and if you're not limited to 1980s or earlier equipment, you're not going to have any issues. There's definitely small orchard tractors and garden tractors out there that have enough power to do everything you need them to do, but none of them are mid-80s, they're all later than that. New Holland T4 I think came out in 2002 from what I could find according to Google and things like that. But yeah, it just, I mean, it adds to the game to being able to, you know, put your own rules and things in place. Like, you know, I've got the rule that I can't, that for the 2 stages of fertiliser in a field, I can't do both stages using the same type of fertiliser. So I normally use bulk fertiliser for one, I've got pellets that I'll use for one, and then I normally use slurry for the other one. And you know, having the farm set in the mid to late 80s, I haven't actually got any exact year set, but it's just mid to late 80s. And again, it just, because I prefer older tractors and things, I don't want to use GPS and things like that. So setting the whole farm in that era, yes, it limits you to some degree as to what vehicles you can have and things like that, but I quite like it. I mean, I actually enjoy the limitation, and part of the reason I enjoy the limitation is the same reason that I enjoy watching people play Polish maps, is it seems on Farming Simulator at least that all Polish maps and Polish tractors and things in this game are all quite old. Now, I'm not sure whether that means that Poland doesn't have a lot of money, that farming is a bare bones kind of thing in Poland and no farmers have a lot of money, or whether it's just that all the Polish stuff is set in a bygone era for some reason. But I do really enjoy watching it because of it, you know, the age of the tractors and equipment and things that get used. And I quite like playing, you know, having your own little rules like that to play by. Most of the rules I play by, not all of them, because I mean, I've told you all that this farm's set in the 80s, I've told you that I'm not going to fertilise a field the same way twice, you know, between harvests sort of thing, when it needs to do 2 fertiliser stages. I also told you that, like, when we started the game, the biggest bank loan we could have was $200,000 based on the value at the farm at the time, because in real life, if you're wanting a bank loan, they'd look at the assets they've got that you can put up as collateral and to work out how much you can borrow. Since the start of the game though, because I've increased the size of the farm over time, the bank is now willing to lend me up $250,000. But a lot of the rules that I have for myself, I also don't share and I keep to myself. And the reason I keep those to myself is that way, if I end up having to break them, it doesn't matter. No one knows I've broken my rules except me. And so yeah, so you know, I have a lot of other little rules and things as well which I don't share just in case I even need to break them. But those rules, and some others sometimes, I will share. I mean, even the mid to late 80s rule I've broken slightly because I've got a Ford 10 series on this farm. I've also got a Ford 40 series. Now, the Ford 40 series didn't actually get released, I believe, until 1992, I think it was. So for a farm set in the late 80s, they couldn't have a 40 series tractor in it. But the 40 series is still quite an old tractor by today's standards. It still looks very old, it looks the part still, and I just happen to really like that mod, so I wanted it on my farm, so I was willing to look the other way. And in terms of farm equipment, because I'm not a farmer in real life, I don't know the age of most of the equipment. You know, you can Google easily enough what age a tractor is, what years the tractor was made, but when you start talking about ploughs and cultivators and things like that, I've got no idea what age a lot of these are, so I don't pay any regard really to what age equipment is I'm using, but the actual vehicles themselves, like my Land Rovers and my tractors and things like that, even combine harvesters. I don't own a combine harvester. I will be renting one, leasing one, and I will get an appropriately aged one to use. I won't be getting a combine harvester that's obviously built way after the 80s. So I think so. Yeah. That was actually about all I wanted to talk about today. Was I wanted to ask for prayer for AK's wife BK, and I want to share with you about the solution I found to this tractor, which was all thanks to the question that AK asked on my last video that forced me to sort of rethink that. And so yeah, because I was quite concerned about the fact I was going to have to use a modern tractor in my vineyard in order to have one with no cabin but rollover protection still, and still small enough to actually fit through my vineyards. So yeah, being able to keep this massy and just use it by turning off the REA wheels mod, and you can see right now with that mod turned off, this tractor's got absolutely no problems whatsoever driving up this hill. It's not digging in and getting stuck at all. But yeah, I just absolutely love that mod. I'd highly recommend that mod to anybody that wants to make the game more realistic and make it more of a challenge, but be prepared to turn it off occasionally when you need to. And if you're wanting to ride a two-wheeled motorbike or a two-wheeled bicycle, you'll need to. If you want to use a tractor as small as this on a hillside vineyard, you'll need to. Yeah. Okay, so I think I might just call it a day. Oh, I'll finish this row here. I'll finish this row and then I'll call it a day. You see how I started off like that, then back up and get a bit of speed up, and then drop it, turn the mulcher back on, and it will keep that speed up for a wee while. So we cruise down here. And as I said, you know, I have treated with this mulcher, I have increased the width of it, but that's just because I want to be able to get all the grass and stuff from around the poles of the vineyard. It just plays with my mind if I have missing patches all through a field like that. So, but yeah, I'm okay with doing that in this case because I haven't gone really absurd with the increasing of the working width of it. To me, if I increase the working width to say 8 to 10 metres, so I only had to go down every second or third row, to me that would be a bit too overboard, a bit too unrealistic. I want to keep it pretty realistic still, so I wanted to have it where I have to go down every single row. But yeah, I just wanted to not have to worry about every single little bit of grass going around all those poles. So by increasing the working width of that mulcher, and as I said, there's also cultivation I've done the same thing with, to 3 metres, it's still only enough that you have to go down every single row still, but it's just enough that you don't need to worry about leaving bits behind. Okay, well, we'll call it a day now. Thank you very much for joining me. Bye.